Check, check. Check, check. All right, we sound good. Now do we look good? How we looking? Van the Man, what's up, dude? All right, we sound good. Now do we look good? How we look? All right, sweet. Well, welcome, Charles. Welcome, Van the Man. And welcome to Market Psychology 101, where we look for value in the markets when there is fear and are cautious when there's greed. We have a lot of fear in the markets right now. And so I am looking for opportunities. Looks better than my bonk. We'll look at bonk today. Almost looks as good as I do. Love the confidence. We need that in times like this. You need to be confident when things aren't going super well. So I'll just do a quick rundown of some macro stuff, and then we'll get into charts. Of course, starting off with fear and greed down into extreme fear, hitting some of those deeper moving averages. And I'll give you targets for whether things are going to turn around and turn bullish or next areas of supports. Because even though we get extreme fear, when people get bearish, I'm not one of those people that just says it's over and the bull market's done. I think you have to take it piece by piece. You have to take a look at all the data and say, well, is there a reason to believe we are going to go from here to here or lower? I like chipping away at the supports and looking for areas to bounce. So try to keep things in perspective when people sort of take in the markets and try to have a big macro view on it. I think sometimes people's imagination and anxiety takes over a little bit, and they're not looking at things with a clear mindset. And so on my channel, as you guys know, I try to challenge your perspectives. I try to offer you multiple perspectives to take an honest look at the market and your strategy. So let's start off with this chart right here. We've been talking about this one for a while, and I think it's kind of holding true, is that since the inauguration or even a little bit before it, we didn't really get a Santa Claus rally. And you can see on average, it can be 100 to 100, 50 days of down or sideways. And that's to be expected when we have inaugurations. This has been sort of one of those seasonal type trends that we've seen ever since 1932. So I'm not surprised by this. I don't think we are bearish. I just think we are testing supports and going through some changes. The market is pricing in some changes, in my opinion. And going forward, this is something that I think goes along or goes in line with the crypto cycle. It goes along in line with the S&P forward PE ratios. Where is it? Right? No, here we go. This chart goes along with this, goes along with the yield curve inversion, and this S&P PE ratio, the yield curve inversion, the crypto cycle, and this are all sort of pointing to 2026 being an opportunity to get some discounts. And as far as those discounts, what we should look for, this is something to keep in mind. I don't know. Some people are saying that we're going to get a 50% correction. I don't know. No one really knows. We might only get a 25% correction or a 20% correction when the next recession comes, whenever that is. But do know that every 4 years, there is about a 20% drawdown, 20 to 25% every 4 to 5 years. Let's go to the S&P 500 and take a look at when was the last time we had a 20 to 25% drawdown. Here, this was only 10%. That was August of last year, the whole yen carry trade unwind. But right here is the obvious candidate. And when we take a look at the peak of where the S&P is, try to get that as close as we can, that's about 25%, give or take. And so keep that in mind. That ended around late 2022. And so when we think about that, if every 4 to 5 years, late 2022, that kind of lines up with later 26, maybe 2027, as those areas to maybe look for a bottom. Now, it's been a while since we've had a 30% correction. The last correction was close to that, but I think we would have to go all the way back to COVID times before we saw a 30% plus correction, if I'm not mistaken. So if we draw that out, of course, that other stuff's in the way. Yeah, 35% correction. So just something to keep in perspective. And of course, that was 2020. So I know some people are expecting this, and maybe we get it. I don't know. We did just have the great financial crisis in 2008, which was a 50% plus drawdown. And we had the dot-com bubble in 2001, 2002, which is a pretty big drop off, 40 plus, almost 50%. So if we only get a 20 to 30% drawdown, whenever that's coming, whether in a year or two, I would be looking for areas of support in that range of when I'm going to buy. So that's just macro things to keep in the back of your mind. Again, we have the crypto cycle, the yield curve inversion, and the Ford P ratios all saying that things are getting expensive, and do not be shocked to see something of a pullback within the near future, whether it be a year or two down the line. It's hard to say. But speaking of the S&P 500 P ratio, I talked about this in yesterday's stock video. I don't think we are quite in a bubble yet. I think we're right on the precipice of it. So I don't know about you guys, but I really haven't felt euphoria like we did in 2021 when there was Wall Street bets and all that stuff, and of course the crypto cycle. I haven't seen that level of euphoria since that time. And when we have seen market tops in the past, I've seen that level of euphoria. So that's something I'm waiting for here. That's sort of the stock rundown. We will talk in today's video. If you're new here, welcome. I go over crypto macro analysis, indicators, charts, but I also do some technical analysis of various cryptos and altcoins and mining stocks. So if you have requests after I do maybe another 5-10 minute spiel on just some macro stuff, please comment below. I'll be taking a look at your favorite altcoins, whether it be Bonk, Doge, or Bitcoin miners such as Wolf, Iron. I know you guys are out there. Happy to take a look at your cryptos for you. Speaking of crypto, fear and greed, let's get into this. Anytime you see these red and orange colors, it's like, oh shit. So I've been talking about this for a while, that this has been in a downtrend, lower highs, lower lows. And I was wondering back here, are we forming a base? Could we be going back up? And obviously we know the answer to that question, but something to keep in perspective is we have not seen fear this low since of that cycle. So in late 2022, that was the true bottom. And then before that, we had a bottom here in January 22, and before that, in the middle of 21, before Bitcoin went up to its 69,000 level. So for perspective, we have not seen fear get down to this area in about 3 years. It's been 3 years almost since we've seen fear at this level. So opportunity, I think so. There are some miners and alts that I am looking at buying. I know it sucks to see them fall right after you buy. So I'll talk about the strategies I use for buying, whether I buy at a certain level or I'm waiting for confirmation to buy. I'll talk about that in the video a little bit later. Of course, as we take a look at this chart, we can see seasonality wise, March tends to not be the best. Now, February overall says it's okay, and even January. But this year, it's been kind of a dud. November and December were pretty great, and that kind of falls in line with what we see seasonality-wise. But compared to October, November being the best couple months, we also have April and May in here. So this downturn, just for perspective, we are going to get a bounce. How much of a bounce? Is it a further leg up? That's up to you to decide. I'll show you the data. I believe we have still further high to go. But April to May tends to be a pretty good time. So I know this time sucks, but I'll show you some things to look for try to give you some hope for the near future. And as we talk about our alts, we also have to remind ourselves about alt season. And that is when there is a rotation, first gradually and then very sharp, when Bitcoin becomes too expensive to buy. At its top, when it is topping, there is a massive rotation into Ethereum, the large caps, and many small and medium caps. So not talking about the Solana stuff, talking about your top 100, maybe some of the top 200 altcoins that can go 5, 10, 20x inside of a month. It's a crazy time. I don't think we are near to that happening. I'll show you the charts as to why that is. But many people, they hear about these stories or they see that people got rich and got a 20x in crypto, and they're asking themselves, how can I do that? I'll show you in the charts what to look for as far as various altcoins and macro charts to say, are we on our way towards this, or is there still some time to go? And just another thing to help us with perspective is that in the past, in 2017, we had a number over half dozen, 30, 40% plus pullbacks. In 2019 to 2021, they don't show it here because this was a downtrend, but there was like 4 or 5, 30% pullbacks in here. And so there was half a dozen or so 20 plus, 30% plus pullbacks before this top. And this cycle has been the cycle of 20% pullbacks. This most recent one, even more. So we'll take a look at that, see where that falls in line. As far as the alt season index, it's still in an uptrend, which is good. We have not broken this trend, higher highs, higher lows. And as far as the Bitcoin rainbow chart, you can see that I've been talking about for a while that where these tops are when we have Bitcoin topping, it's in the red, the light red area. And I've been conservatively saying, what if we only get the orange? Because we have this clear downward trend of the tops. What if we only get to the orange? We haven't even gotten there yet. So for people saying Bitcoin has already topped this cycle, this is one reason I would say that's definitely not true. I'll show you other indicators that to me say we have not topped yet this cycle. But as you can see on the way to the top, let's look at the very bottom. What can happen? We can go up a color zone or two and then come down a color zone or so. So right here, it went up 1, 2, 3.5, and then it came down 1 to 2 color zones up here, and 1 up 2, it's coming down a color zone and a half. So just where the green zone is right there, the light green zone, you can see the bottom number there is at around 71K. To me, that 71K number is curious, and I'll show you why in the charts. For any of you who have watched the videos this week, know what I'm going to get into. We'll talk about Bitcoin mining stocks as well in this video and take a look at the technical analysis of those. But let's get into Bitcoin. I know that's why y'all are here. And looking at this chart, at least on the weekly, we can see that the 20-week moving average is not holding up so well. The candle body is getting underneath it. Now, the week hasn't closed out. So if this candle body comes back up, then I'd say the 20-week moving average is still holding. But if this Heikin-Ashi candle body starts to stretch a little bit more, I'm going to be eyeing up this 75, 76K number right back here, and even just drawing a fib from the low to the high, just like that. We also have this 236 at around 69K. So in this area of the 50-week moving average around 77 to 69K, you can see that 236 area is right where there was former resistance in March. Back at this all-time high, this lines up with the top all the way back from 2021. We were only getting candle wicks above that area. We were never seeing candle body closes. And once we did see candle body closes, it moved to the next fib. This was the macro 1618 if you draw high to low. And so getting down to this area of support, you can see that is what we once had as resistance. So to me, that would be sort of max discount territory. If it starts to get under there, I do start to become concerned that maybe we are getting into somewhat of a downward stretch. Not that you can't get good discounts or deals, but I would be worried about the overall trend changing. We go over to the daily and take a look at the moving averages. This also has me a little bit concerned, is that I was looking for support at the 200-day moving average. Well, you see the 200-day also losing it. So right now, yes, we do have a big wick down here, but it's barely holding on to the 200-day moving average. And if we measure out, remember, let's keep in mind this chart right here, as far as these pullbacks, we've had 20 to 30% pullbacks this cycle. If we measure out this pullback so far, it's almost at 38%. So we have not, or it's almost at 28 to 30%. I think I said 38. So we have not seen a pullback like that since right in here in August of last year. And that one was a 30%er. So do know these times where we've had these pullbacks, as far as this cycle, that's been a little bit rare. But with those pullbacks, you can see this one came down to the 50-week moving average. So if we did get a little bit more, me personally, I'm looking for a reversal or support, good support on the 50-week moving average. And I will just say, seeing a weekly candle wick like that, that does show, the longer the wick like that, that does show that there is buy support in here. So maybe that support it's going to be tested as far as what I'm seeing, but I still think there's discounts to be had. Van de Man, indicators don't reflect that we've topped yet. However, isn't it possible that the political and economic climate ruins this cycle to the point we don't reach the orange band of the rainbow chart? Isn't it also possible that we won't hit the pi cycle top of the same reason too? Let's take that question. Let's break it apart right there, because you asked a couple things. As far as the pi cycle top, I'm glad you mentioned that, because let's actually, I don't know what happened to the former pi cycle indicator, by the way, but there is this one. I do like it. It's not as nice and clean looking as the other pi cycle indicator, but just going through here, when this crosses yellow above orange, that's when it has signaled pi cycle top. Okay. And so you can see a bigger cross of yellow above orange here in 2013. You can match this up with other pi cycle indicators. Same thing. Again, when the yellow moving average crosses above the orange, that's cycle top. Okay. Last cycle, we didn't get a pi cycle top signal here, but we did right here. But I want you to notice how the moving averages change every cycle. Last cycle, it barely crossed over. So I don't think this is your political question aside, I don't think, at least from what this trend is showing, that we're going to get a pi cycle top flashing this cycle. The way it's trending, I think we might get another deal like this where these moving averages kind of get close, but they don't meet. So you can see right here, people may have argued that that was somewhat of a top because the averages got close. I am looking for the averages to get somewhat close together, but I am not looking for a pi cycle signal this time around. And then another reason for that is even just the fibs. If we draw out our Fibonacci retracements, I do have a fib here. There we go. That way I don't have to draw it again. Is it that one? No, that's not the right fib. Let me get rid of that. Let me just delete it altogether. If we draw out our fibs, and we're going to take them off log scale to show that the fibs hit higher, they've hit higher marks in prior cycles. Actually, I'm sorry. Let's go to, forget. I'll say on this chart, I know there's a lot of lines. I'm just trying to give you a clean look. But each cycle, we hit lower fib extensions. And I think that also goes to show the argument I'm making with the pi cycle. So you can see here, from the 2013 top to the 2017 top, this fib, it hits something like the 8618. I forget, but you can clearly see it got well above there. All right. Last cycle to 2021, or 2017 to 2021, the fibs overall got to the 3618 to the 236. That was the area we had a top right up here. Okay, cool, great. So we're already seeing this trend that the tops hit a lower fib extension each time. So that's another reason I'm not looking for as high of a price. I'm thinking at best we get the next area down, the 2618 to the 3618. That's 155 to 208K. There is an indicator called the log regression that kind of reflects this. I know it's messy. I apologize. But if we take this off right here, we're just going to take the fib off because it's too messy. If we take the fib off and we see where the tops are hitting in the log regression, that also lines up with that 150 to 200K area. And that also lines up with the rainbow chart as far as this log regression, log scale, factors of 10, regresses over time. We're not hitting as high of tops. We're not seeing as explosive and volatile of conditions as we have in the past. So I think there's a lot to say that we won't hit the pi cycle top. And that all those indicators that I showed you there and the trend, the way it's going, I think that is reason to be cautious. A counter argument, I would say, would be inflation. Inflation devalues our dollars. Our dollars compared to the last cycle are somewhere between 20 to 30% less valuable. So why can't Bitcoin get 20 to 30% higher than the predicted range? That would be a counter argument I would have. As far as your political question, the political and economic climate ruining the cycle, I think this is something our brains do. And I'm not saying I'm pro-Trump, anti-Trump. With all political parties and people, there's things I like that they do and things I don't like. But I do think we look for correlations, that when they're doing this tariff stuff and we're seeing how the market reacts, that we're looking for correlations and trying to point to, see, this is why the market went down today, when it might be a convenient reason, but might not be the reason. In the last market, there's the economic cycle. There's like 3 or 4 different major cycles. There's the business cycle, and they all kind of go at different rates. And so I think sometimes the overall end game that people are looking for is actually more delayed than we think. For example, going over to the yield curve inversion, we have to take that log regression off. For the yield curve inversion, I mean, this is one of those cyclical things that this has preceded downturns and recessions in the past, but it takes a while. When the banks are lending money and they have different rates that they are charging people to borrow money, and they're working with the Fed, when those rates change over time, the impact of that takes time. And so from these last 2 yield curve uninversions, it took about 600 days. And so even 2008 is a great example. There was a lot of writing on the wall, a lot of bad news back at this time. Even the dot-com bubble, people knew it was a bubble for 3 or 4 years. But some of those cycles, the business cycle, the economic cycle, the different factors that played into it, they had to play out until we finally saw the bubble pop or we saw that downturn. So I think, sorry for the long answer, but I'm trying to give you the best answer I can. I think that we tend to hyper-focus on the stock market cycle and we draw correlations to what politicians are doing, but I don't think that it's as one-to-one as the news tries to make it out to be. So I hope I explained that well. Yeah. Anyways, let's get back to Bitcoin. And so what do I want to do here? I want to draw this fib again, because I think this is worth showing that when Bitcoin hit the 1618, we had this rejection. We can see no candle bodies except for this one closing above. We were never treating it as support. It was only ever resistance, and we're getting a little bit of a pullback here. Even last time that Bitcoin had this phenomena, let's go to, how do I want to draw this? I guess let's do this. Let's put our fib on the log scale. Even when Bitcoin seen its former all-time high in last March, and people were celebrating, they were saying, hey, we have a new all-time high here. Yes, while that was true, the candles were showing, well, we're not breaking through resistance yet, so hold on. But we saw drawbacks, as much as 30%. If we draw from the real, the initial top to the very bottom, it was more than just 30% in here. I mean, if we draw from that absolute top to that bottom, that was 33%. But what you also see here is that the price came down a whole fib scale. So from the very top, this is the 888. I had that in, but it had a 236 correction here. And we saw that earlier in the video when I drew low to high. When we draw our golden ratio fib, low to high, okay, you can see it got to that 236. I know you can't see it now because it's way over there, but you see 236 over there, right? So again, with this correction, the two areas I'm looking for are the 236 right here at around 69K, and we might only get a wick to it, and the 50-week moving average. We got to go to the weekly to see that. So you can see that 50-week moving average, and remember, this was a 236 area. I had to extend the fib up. We might see, kind of like back here, candle body, close here, and a wick down to the 236. That's sort of what I'm expecting for this pullback. So I don't think it's done yet. I could be wrong, but that's something I'm looking for. Van the Man, something else I wanted to bring up again, just with the Pi cycle stuff, is let's go to the monthly. I think this is another thing to say that we may not hit a Pi cycle. And this is the ultimate RSI indicator, and you see the peak of the relative strength index. There is somewhat of a downward trend. To me, this is another one of those indicators saying that we haven't topped yet. I mean, we can draw a line here and say, this is the conservative approach. Let's say around 94, if we follow this trend, that's when the top will be. Or, I mean, you could have a more bullish outlook where if you draw from those tops and you say, you know what, maybe 2021 was a little bit less than what we should have got. Maybe we get something in the higher 90s. So two ways of looking at it, but whether it's not the mid 90s or the high 90s on the ultimate RSI, I think that's another reason to show. I'm looking at it conservative first because I don't want to be left holding bags when the market actually tops. So I rather be a little bit cautious, hedge my risk. I rather look at it from the more the less bullish outlook. But this is another thing that tells me we aren't getting as violent of tops, but that doesn't mean we are done yet. Okay, there's a lot of people saying there's no alt season and this cycle's done. I just don't buy into any of that. Speaking of alt season, let's go to Bitcoin dominance. And what I think is kind of interesting, so on the monthly, I'm glad I kept it on the monthly here, we can see that the moving averages, this is the 50-month moving average, that provided resistance last cycle. Now, we got through that, and right now we're at the 100-month moving resistance, or moving average resistance. So I'm wondering if, I said it back here, but I'll say it again, that's fine. I'm wondering if this is the topping area for Bitcoin dominance, and sort of like the logarithmic regression, with the more alts that are out there, I mean, we saw this happen from 2017 to 21, is that Bitcoin dominance didn't get as high before. And so I do wonder if, I'm not looking for it to close as high. I know some people are calling for 74%. I'm still looking for somewhat of a downward trend there. And if we go to the weekly, we can see that 50-week moving average. We need to break under that. So I talk about this a lot. The 50-week moving average is the difference between bullishness and bearishness. Now, the moving average that held the most support was that red line. That was the 20-week moving average. But we got to get under the 50 and then turn bearish. And so if we take a look at the stochastic RSI, that's getting a little bit overbought if you want to take a look at it that way. But here's one way I like looking at it, and that's on the monthly. You can see when the stochastic started to turn over. I mean, are we starting to get some bearish divergence in the RSIs on the dominance? If so, then, maybe we have, if we measured it out equally, what would that be around? Maybe we have, sorry, that's in the way, about a year until alt season. That kind of goes along with the overall idea of a 4-year cycle. We'll see. I'm not married to, all because a certain amount of time played out before that it has to be the same amount of time again. I think that type of analysis, or when people copy fractals, I think that's a little foolish, because something happened before doesn't have to happen again. There's many different changing variables. I try to let the data drive my decisions here. But maybe we're getting some bearish divergence. We can just go to the regular RSI, and if we go over to the weekly, what do we see here? We definitely see these trends overall heading downward. Okay, the overall, we see these trends downward while dominance is going up. That's bearish divergence. It's hard to say when bearish divergence is eventually going to lead to the change in the swing, but that's something I'm looking for, as well as if we just draw a fib, we get our golden ratio up here. Let's do that. If we draw our fib from the last high to low, we can see that dominance wicked right to that 786. So maybe I want to see what happens with dominance when it gets around the 64%. Is it going to kind of run into a ceiling here and then turn around? If so, then I would feel pretty confident about that being a possible top. Speaking of dominance, let's take a look at Ethereum, Bitcoin, Total 3 Bitcoin, and others Bitcoin. So earlier in the video, I talked about what are indicators and charts to look at to say, are we closing in on an alt season? When Bitcoin becomes that is when we see the rotation of alt season. Okay, so Ethereum, Bitcoin, this is basically the inverse of Bitcoin dominance, but whenever Bitcoin dominance peaks is when Ethereum, Bitcoin bottoms. And you can see the date right there, December of 2017. Alt season from this bottom was literally the next month until January 8th. So it wasn't even a month. Back in 2017, if you're in the right alts, many of them were going up, going sideways, going up. They were doing okay, but all of a sudden, within this month of December and the first week of January of 2017 to 2018, I remember this time. It was great times to be in crypto, but it happened so fast, and then the rug was pulled and it was over. Whereas last cycle, September 2019 to alt season, which concluded around May 10th in here, this was the alt season right in here. And we can add Bitcoin dominance to this, and I can show you what I'm talking about. Let's get rid of that. But you can see how these charts are inverted right now. Okay. And so when Ethereum, Bitcoin's going up, Bitcoin dominance is going down. And when we had this violent move down right in here, that's when alt season finished. You see Bitcoin dominance at the very bottom, and then Ethereum, Bitcoin up here. So don't look for Ethereum, Bitcoin to necessarily get to this trend line. We don't need to see that happen. But when Bitcoin dominance has bottomed, I mean, here is kind of close, but I would not necessarily be taking a look at this trend line either. And as far as Ethereum overall, when we take a look at this trend line of where to expect Ethereum's valuation or pairing against Bitcoin to get to, remember, ETH Bitcoin, this is comparing the market caps. And so this is saying that Ethereum is 16% of the market cap of Bitcoin. You can go to CoinMarketCap, do that math yourself. 267 billion is 16% of this 1.7. I'm just going to round 1.7 trillion. And so what this chart is showing, let's say you're an Ethereum guy or girl or whoever, and you are seeing this, you're like, well, At one point, Ethereum is going to be half or 0.5 the market cap of Bitcoin. That's what you believe. I don't know if this is the bottom or if it's going to bottom further, but you might be looking for Ethereum to have half the market cap. So let's say Bitcoin goes to 155K and has a market cap of 3 trillion. Then you would believe Ethereum could have a market cap of 1.5 trillion. 5 trillion market cap. I mean, you do the math right there. That's about a 5x. Could you see Ethereum being worth 11K? Funny enough, because 5 times 2200 it's right up there. So I know a lot of people are bagging on Ethereum, and I don't blame you. You see Ethereum, Bitcoin, it's still bottoming out. But this is still my area that I'm looking for Ethereum. And I know that seems unbelievable. I remember last cycle when Ethereum was in the $200 range. Heck, I remember Ethereum when it was even lower, like less than $100. I wish I would have bought. But yeah, I remember when it's $200 and all of a sudden it's getting up to 5,000. So as unbelievable as 11K Ethereum seems, being someone who is in the last 2 cycles, to me, it doesn't seem that unbelievable. Let's go back to Ethereum, Bitcoin, and let's see if, like Bitcoin dominance, remember Bitcoin dominance, we were taking a look at that 64% area of the top. Is there a possible way to look for where we might see a bottom? Well, we can draw a fib from the high to the low and make sure our fib is on log scale. Here are things I'm looking for. It was on log scale. Why did I take it off? But what do we see here? We see that 236 providing some support. Yes, it wicked through, but candle body wise, maybe this 236 shows some support. So that might be one thing to look for. We can also draw our fib. Why does that always get in the way? We can also draw our fib from low to high, and we can see just inverse that 786 is possible support down here. So that's one way of looking at it, that maybe, we had this lower high this last cycle for Ethereum, Bitcoin. Maybe we are going to get a higher low and we're going to get something of a wedge. That would be my most bullish way of presenting this information to you, is that maybe we get something of a wedge like this. That's what I hope. What I don't want to see, and this is just honestly, or having an honest look at the charts here, what I don't want to see is this. So we have this trend line. I don't want to see this, but it's possible. We do see some of this line up. Who knows? Maybe this is an anomaly. We could take it further, but from where these points line up, it's possible we may still have lower to go for Ethereum, Bitcoin. And so that's just something to keep in the back of your mind. I'm not saying that's true, but where I'm looking for macro supports, I kind of like with Bitcoin, I take that one piece at a time. All right, take it one piece at a time, and you look for support. If support doesn't hold, we look for the next area. Okay, take it one step at a time. Like if you're going on a massive hike, a scary hike on the side of a mountain, you're not going to look at the whole mountain and let anxiety take over your body and your mind. You want to take it one step at a time. Be like, well, this is unfortunate. Where's the next step? Where can I support? Where can I look for support next? Okay. Let's take a look at others Bitcoin. And by the way, if you don't know what others is, it is the total market cap outside the top 10 cryptos. And so we are talking about these guys right here: Tron, Cardano, Doge, some stable coins, Binance, Solana, XRP, Ethereum, Bitcoin. Okay. So the total market cap of all the alts divided by Bitcoin. Let's take a look at that pairing, because again, what are we looking for? We're looking for when alt season might happen. Okay. A lot of people are saying there's no alt season coming. Alt season is canceled. This is why I disagree with those people. Think about, why would they be saying that right now? Well, for one, we're underneath all these macro moving averages. And so, we're falling until we get support, and it says otherwise. But also, we're in this channel as of right now. This channel's not been invalidated, and we're at the lower end of the channel. So others, or all the altcoins compared against Bitcoin, is pretty crappy right now. to say the least. Now, that could be an opportunity to look for deals in the market and discounts. And that is what I'm doing. I see this and I say, we might break support. We can put our Fibonacci scale back analog. Maybe it goes to one of these areas. I don't care. Again, one step at a time. But right now, as far as the channel shows, maybe this is the support. Well, until it says otherwise, I'm willing to go there. And we also had the top last cycle of others against Bitcoin get to this 1618. Well, where does the channel lead to? The channel leads to this 2618 up here. So I would be taking a look for others Bitcoin to get up to this next area, the 2618, give or take, or somewhere up here, when we are getting alt season. But this is why people are so anti-alt season right now and saying alt season's not happening. This is why. It might go, where's 2017 here? So late 2017, when we had alt season, was right in here. It might go quick. Let's zoom in on this. This is how quick alt season was in here. 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks. 4 weeks, matter of a month. It just ripped up. But you can see last cycle from 2019 to 21, once we for sure had that base, it took a while, but it was truly in the month of April when it went up here. That's when we truly had alt season. So right now we're bottomed against all that. And that is why people are saying alt season's not happening. So again, think of the narratives out there. Those narratives, if you're able to take a look in those and say, why are people saying that? Well, you see on the charts, you know exactly why. And for me, I'm looking at opportunities instead of being scared of the market right now. We can also take a look at total 3, which is the total market cap, excluding Bitcoin and ETH. We can divide that by Bitcoin. And what we see here, again, when it peaks, that's where the tops are. And then we have those crashes that start sending us down. But right now, in my opinion, this looks like it is rounding out here, that it's slowly rounding out. I'm looking at the 618 at around 0.4 to be a possible base. And yes, it might round out and then yoink. That might happen. Anything could happen. But that's what I'm looking for as far as total 3 divided by Bitcoin. As far as the moving averages are still holding resistance right there. So any other macro things to look at? I'm just going to keep harping on this. So when I say that Bitcoin or that we don't get alt season until Bitcoin tops, I mean, in my opinion, this is there's no more truthful of a chart than this one. And that is, we can even go to the daily. Let's go to the daily time frame. We got to scroll back a little bit. But you'll see here, this is where Bitcoin topped. Okay. The pink line, obviously that's Bitcoin dominance. Once it broke underneath that area of support down here, that was December 2020. Here was alt season, right here. Where was Bitcoin? It already topped. It just topped. Bitcoin just topped. It was too expensive to buy. Bitcoin was too expensive. Then that money rotated into alts. It rotated. Why did it rotate? It was too expensive. Let's go to 2021. I think the same argument is true. Here is that support, this general area. Okay. We had a double top for the dominance. Here is that support. Where did that support start to break down? It was right as Bitcoin was done forming a top. Now, when it was truly at the top, yes, it was a little bit further down. That's fine. But Bitcoin was topping. It was right near the top. And the same thing holds true again. Bitcoin was too expensive. And so why would people buy more when they could rather get altcoins that are much cheaper? And then that's why those explode. So if you are getting into altcoins, any altcoins or miners, you have to be ready for this time, this 2 to 4 weeks, that 2 to 6 weeks worth of time, where when this rotation happens, you need to be taking profits because this doesn't last forever. And I will tell you, being someone who is in those last 2 cycles, I remember when there were people saying, especially last cycle, they're like, this is the top, alt season's done. Most people in the comments on Twitter, they didn't believe it. They're making fun of all those people who are just sharing the data. They're like, are you kidding me? Alts are going to go up. They're going to keep going up. This is great. It's never going to stop. And then boom, it was over. So do pay attention when we have that extreme greed. You want to be cautious and take a look at profit taking. So again, we don't get true alt season until Bitcoin tops. And earlier in this video, I talked about how, for multiple reasons, I don't believe Bitcoin has topped. And so if Bitcoin hasn't topped yet, why would we get alt season? I'm looking at the fib targets. Again, I'll go through these. Okay, Bitcoin did just hit the 1618 fib. It got rejected. Okay, that's fine. But I'm looking at these fib targets somewhere around the 2618 to the 3618, maybe 155K to 200K. All right, you can take a look at the log regression. Maybe you're less of a fib guy and more of a log regression person. Okay, this is where the tops fall in line. No doubt about it. And so you're just looking for a top within that range. We just got to the start, but there's still a ways to go. And that, you can see the numbers on the right. If we top later this year, I mean, it could be 180K. And by the way, just for, you see these down here, the average amount of time in prior cycles to the next peak has been about 850 days, which this is why some people we're saying there's a top in March. They try to predict. But again, I don't think you can just use the average amount of time and say, well, this is what has to happen. Okay, that's one pattern, but I can show you half a dozen different time scales. Doesn't mean it has to play out. You can take the average amount of days of every cycle from halving to the peak, and that puts us in August, September time. Okay, doesn't have to top then. You can say 4-year cycle. You can say whatever you want, but I'm just looking for what the data is showing me, and I'm looking for Bitcoin to get to that 2618, 3618 range. You remember where it was, 155, 200K. I'm looking for this log regression area. I'm looking for the orange bands in the rainbow chart. Okay, you see where the peaks are. And even conservatively speaking, if the orange bands, again, we're just taking the trend from the red lines, okay? You see how these tops are descending. So let's take a look at the orange bands later this year. Where are they? Well, funny enough, the light orange band starts at around 150K, and the dark orange band is in that 180 to low 200K area. So that lines up with everything else we're saying here. The log regression, which I just showed you, and yes, the log regression here, it's just like the rainbow chart, but this is showing where those tops are. Okay, we go later this year. You see the number on the right. Okay, you see it's right in that range. We can add on the fib again, and it's going to get really messy here. I apologize. I hope I don't give any of you a seizure, but we can see that 2618 to 3618 area right in there. That's where, if it's in there, I'm like, this is probably a top. But again, when does alt season happen? It happens when the top is in or when it's in that process of topping. We're not there yet. We are simply not there yet. And so on the way there, we are going to get discounts. This is one of those discounts. And as I talked about earlier in the video, I've told you where my discount area is. That 236 fib, I'm not going to draw it again, but basically 70 to 77K in that area. Here is, I'm going to give you something else that's bullish to look for. The MACD, or that's an acronym for the moving average convergence divergence. It's one of the top indicators out there. Let's take a look at the last few times the MACD flipped positive. Right here. On the weekly, when it flipped positive, what happened? That's when Bitcoin went up from its former all-time high, even the fib, up to the 1618. Okay? Let's get rid of these moving averages. I want to add on the fib here because I think the fib kind of shows it a little better. Okay. It got from the former all-time high area to the 1618. You see where the MACD is there. Well, what about before that? When the MACD flipped positive. Look at this massive move. When the MACD flipped from red to green, what followed? Okay. It went from 28K all the way up to 74K. All right. What about before that when the MACD flipped positive? We have this minor one in here, and this happens. No indicator's perfect. Okay. It wasn't truly done bottoming there. But what about the last time it happened? Right in here in August of 22. Now, this was before the bottom of the cycle, but I will say the pi cycle bottom was somewhere in here. Okay. It didn't trigger here, it triggered somewhere over here. But this was showing bullish divergence. Okay. We were clearly in a downtrend. We were looking for the downtrend to end. And when the MACD flipped positive, even though we kept going negative, that was that bullish divergence on the MACD to look for and be like, well, maybe things will start to turn around. And they did. Okay. And it went from a range of 25 to 15K up to 30K. All right. So you made either double or 50% there overall. So again, the last 3 times, 1, 2, and 3, the last 3 times the MACD flipped positive were really good times to be in crypto. Right now, the MACD is bottoming. I don't know if it's going to be a 2-month thing. I don't know if it's going to be a 4-month thing, however long that is. I don't know. But I think it would benefit all of you guys to have this indicator on and pay attention to this one on the weekly. Once this starts to flip positive, I'm going to be very excited about what's going to happen. Okay. So definitely keep an eye on that indicator. I think that is one of those indicators that has me feeling pretty bullish. If we take a look at the stochastic RSI, I mean, this one is bottoming out still on the weekly. That's another thing. So we have the MACD red, we have the stochastic RSI oversold. All right. I mean, to me, that says, this, we're going to be seeing confirmation of a bottom soon. And, could it go down a little bit more? Sure. I've already given targets of where to look for. We have the ultimate RSI. This one is showing a little bit more bearish that it could still come down. I wonder. Oh yeah, we've looked at this on the monthly. Let's take a look at the daily. On the daily, it's bottomed out. So, maybe we get somewhat of a bounce. Any other indicators I want to take a look at here? I'll just take a look at some of these that I looked at in a while. I do like looking at the Darvis box time to time. More of a trader's tool, but anytime it gets above, then it's, frankly overbought. And if it gets underneath, it's oversold. But, I mean, that's one thing. If you take a look at the Darvis box, it's the candle's hanging right on that line. And we did get a little underneath it last summer. But, if it's under here, then Darvis box is saying it's oversold. So, maybe this is an area for a bottom, but we will get just some candles and wicks poking through it. So there's one other one that I like to take a look at. Hull Suite. I like to take a look at this one on the weekly. And I don't know if you guys are picking up on this. I hope so. But I like looking for the trends. The trend is your friend. That's why I use Heikinashi's signal. That's why I use moving averages. Okay, I think the trends are good areas to look for. But when we're above the Hull Suite on the weekly, it's bullish. When we start to get under it, it's bearish on the micro time frames. We get over the Hull Suite, it's bullish. So it's like a bull market support band. We get underneath the Hull Suite, sideways, down. We get above it, bullish. We have just gotten underneath this Hull Suite indicator. Okay, so sideways and down, and then this thing will probably level out over here and we'll break through it. Who knows, maybe sometime in April or May. And I mean, that matches up with seasonality a little bit too. It also matches up with, how the timing of this chart plays out. So I try not to get too much into predictions, but I think, the Hull Suite, it is showing us the Hull Suite and even the MACD that I showed you before, they're both showing us that, we may be down here for a month or so, even during March, and then boom, we start to shoot up. So, yeah. Let me know what you think in the comments below if you agree or disagree or what you think. But I think with all that macro stuff out of the way, let's get into some charting. Let's go through some altcoins. And if you have any altcoins you would like for me to take a look at, or stocks, and please preface, because someone last week, they gave me a ticker. I thought they were asking for an altcoin or Solana coin ticker, but thank God it was a stock. Someone asked me last week to chart Dutch Bros. In random story, I did go to Dutch Bros, and I never go there, by the way, because the people there are always super hyper because they're just drinking caffeine all day. But I got a large. I was like, I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to get a large coffee. Holy crap. Dutch Bros large coffee is like a big gulp. And so I was literally shaking for like half the day. Never doing that again. You don't need a large at Dutch Bros. All right, let's get into this. Let's take a look at Ethereum. A lot of talk about Ethereum recently. Let's break this guy down. So Ethereum, we've had this higher low trend line. Okay, we can even move it down a little bit. It's still within the range of that, technically speaking. Excuse me. Let's get rid of this fib here. I don't know why that's there. Forget why. But anyways, if we go from the very bottom of where that peaked out, it's somewhat on that same trend. At least not too far away from it. But as far as Ethereum, let's take our fib. Let's move it on log scale. And what do we see right here? Well, we see the weekly. Man, what a weekly sell-off this is. Breaking underneath the 618, hanging around that 200-week moving average, and the going down to the 0.5. And so what I'll also add about Ethereum is last cycle, I do think, let's turn off the moving averages. Let's clean this up a bit. Bear with me just for a second. I want us to pay attention to this right here. And we're going to add on something. Bitcoin dominance. Because you know how Bitcoin dominance is the shadow of Ethereum Bitcoin. Okay. When Bitcoin dominance had that first peak and then started to come down, what happened with Ethereum? Well, that started to come down as well. And so that's just something to look for, that, maybe even when Bitcoin dominance tops out, we may still get somewhat of a break of this uptrend. And I am wondering, just like when I look at what happened here in 2019 and what's going on right now, that's true, but that is something I think about. But as far as the stochastic RSI and the MACD, let's take a look at this. Stochastic, it's bottomed and it's wanting to flip positive. So if it flips positive, something to look for. As far as the MACD trend, at least on the weekly, if you're looking to get Ethereum at a discount, let's take a look at when it's flipped positive on the weekly. Okay, not too bad. That was a pretty good time to get in. Okay, here, a little bit of a fake out, but I would say even this little downtrend, it already moved up. And so, yeah, and it was already testing that recent high that it made. So less convincing of a time right here. It was sideways for a bit and then went up. So a little bit of a mixed bag. But if Ethereum continues to fall a lot and the MACD starts to turn upwards, you may be getting in some decent discounts. I'm curious to see what the regular RSI shows. As far as the regular RSI, okay, let's zoom in here. I want to see what happens with this, whether it gets underneath this area. Because if the regular RSI continues to put in a newer low, that will have me concerned overall, at least micro-wise, because you could just say it's bearish. Now, we did have the bottom here, And yes, the RSI could bottom out again, but overall, I mean, we have the price going, we have the RSI going down and the price just, sorry about, that's my cat's automatic feeder. It has this recording thing, and I recorded my voice to let my cat know it's time to eat. No, it's weird. Anyways, we have the strength weakening out overall. So I'm curious, are we going to see a bottom in the RSI right there? Some things to look for. And by the way, at the beginning of the video, I talked about, different ways I buy. One way I buy is I have targets. And let's say it's Ethereum. It's not, but let's say it is. I might take a look at Ethereum and say, you know what? I'm targeting this 0.5 fib. I'm going to have a buy order on Coinbase, Robinhood, whatever, to buy Ethereum at 2060. I don't know if it's going to go lower or not. I just like that discount area. I can also take a look at these moving averages and say, you know what? Ethereum's 200-week moving average, it's at around 2,300. I'm going to set a buy order. And you can see that's what people do in here. These 200-week moving averages have gotten bought up, and people are waiting for that 0.5 fib. I don't know if it's going to get there. That's one way to try to catch these big pullbacks. The other way, if you want more confirmation, is to use the stochastic, the MACD, flipping positive, or even the buy signals. So this is one of my buy-sell signal indicators, 10-20 MA crossover with Heikin-Ashi signals, and I use Heikin-Ashi candles. But when you get these buy signals, that tends to fall somewhat in line with the stochastic and the MACD flipping positive. So there's a way to buy with more confirmation. I will say I do that more so in a bear market. And then there's a way to buy to get price targets. So those are two ways I take a look at dollar cost averaging. My strategy doesn't have to be yours. Fred Drums, what's up, dude? AIOZ, many thanks. You're welcome. And I hope you're doing well today. AIOZ for Fred Drums. That's a cool name. I like saying that name, Fred Drums. AIOZ Network. All right. So we talked about this one, I think last time, and how, we have this wedge here and it broke underneath it. So let's get rid of that micro wedge guy. Okay. When wedges break one way or another, you can have big moves. And what do we got here? So it's coming down. And right now the candle body is holding support on the former all-time high. That's the gray line. Okay. That provided support last time around when it had a pullback. Okay. So here, if you don't want to see it go lower, you want to see the candle bodies on the weekly say above that right there. And this is a former all-time high line I'm talking about. It's at that 100-week moving average. Probably doesn't have a monthly. Maybe it does. Monthly still hanging out. The wicks are being bought up on the 20-month moving average. Let's get off that though. Fib-wise. So yeah, you see it. Here's one thing. I am a little skeptical of any of these cryptos just because they've already ripped up. And I mean, we can see it right here that from that very bottom, it's ripped up 11,000%. And so, can it keep ripping? It has a market cap of $411 million. So it depends how bullish you are on AIOZ. A trigger word for some crypto people, what are its fundamentals? That's one word that drives me crazy. I'm sorry, but there's so many. Every crypto out there, they all try to claim their fundamentals are great, and then it does all these magical things, solves these problems that never really existed. I hate that word. But, if you believe in its fundamentals, okay, then, maybe you believe this is a $10 billion altcoin. I don't know. But overall, this does concern me a little bit. That 100-week moving average and the way you can see how the wicks were getting underneath. Now it's more the candle body. That does concern me, but also, it's wicking down a little bit further. And it is making a more recent low. It is making a more recent low than what we had this time. And so, sometimes I look for, is there anything, any bit of a change? Wait, see. Maybe there's a trend line in here somewhere. I'm just kind of externally processing so you can hear how I'm thinking. Maybe this was kind of a fake out guy back here. So, could this be a bottom? I mean, it's possible, and maybe that's why it's wicked down here. But if it starts to get under a trend line like this, if it starts to get to the 888, I would worry about a lot more downside. And the 888 is at around 26 cents. So again, keep in perspective, this one's already ripped up a ton, which means they can come down a lot. And let's take a look at a couple other guys here. Let's take a look at, I have to take off some of my other indicators. Bear with me a second. Let's take off the buy-sell signal and the moving averages. Let's move over to the weekly, and let's just take a look at a couple of these. Let's go back to Darvis box. All right, so, is it doing something similar like here or going down further? But it is underneath its Darvis box. As far as the ultimate RSI, it's one I really wanted to take a look at. I mean, that one, it's falling. So here's why the comparison doesn't hold true anymore. It's falling strength-wise further underneath. And you see how the peaks in the RSI were lower, but the price got higher. That's what's called bearish divergence. So I would be more cautious with this one. We have bearish divergence. We have an 11,000% move up. And then LOL caffeinated. You're talking about my Dutch Bros moment. Yeah, it was not good. I do like coffee. It was more of a dessert thing, but no hate against Dutch Bros. All right. Let's get into the next ones. Let's get into XRP. Let's take a look at XRP. See how that one's going. So XRP right now, what do we got? So we don't need this right here. So yeah, ever since it broke above that trend line of these lower highs, it was getting ready to turn very bullish, and it did. It went from like 50 cents, did a 6x up to about $3. What was the top here? Around 340. When we take our fib, actually, let's go back to log. When we take our fib off log, you can see it got stuck at the 1618. This one, I do think it's good to look at the moving averages. And with XRP, I mean, it's trying to hang up there. But that former all-time high in this 20-week, it's trying to hold on as best as it can. You can see there's buyers coming in here. They're trying to keep it up. But compared to what the rest of the crypto market's doing, I mean, if Bitcoin's going down as much as it is, I'm a little bit surprised XRP is still hanging up here, to be honest. Now, XRP, it is a large cap altcoin. It has a market cap of $124 billion. Take a look at any stocks out there with a similar market cap. Tend to be pretty darn good stocks. And so XRP already did, again, it did about a 6x to the top. So to me, that's a profit-taking area. And if you believe it's going higher, I would be, if it were me, I'm not telling you what to do, I'd be definitely taking a look at taking profits around this 2618 at 465. Maybe it touches $5. I don't know. But I think these are your two profit-taking areas right in here. And so if XRP keeps going down lower, then we do put our fib back on log. And we can take a look at, well, we have the 50-week moving average coming up to the 888. Let's add the 888 on there. So we'll do that. We'll add that fib on there. The 50-week moving average, I'd be taking a look. If this breaks, I'd be taking a look at support right down there at about $1.60. Going over to the daily, it's getting underneath its 100-day moving average. So do not be surprised. The 200-day lines up with this wick back here too at about $1.78. See what happens at that 200-day moving average. So one step at a time before the 888 and $1.60. See if the former all-time high support breaks, and then watch the 200-day moving average. I think the 200-day moving average in this scenario would be an important indicator to watch for. Let's take a look at Solana. Hope all of you are having a great Friday, by the way. It's nice and sunny where I am today, so loving it. Solana, man, not good. Fell back into that channel. The channel was holding, the 888 was holding, but this is not looking good for Solana at all. When it's gone down 60% from this top, and that's technically an all-time high right there, and it's gone down 60% from there. So Solana, right now, this 786 has been support in the past, and then we have this channel that it just re-entered into. And so Solana at around 124 all the way down to the 90s, the mid-90s, would be an area to look for Solana. But if we go over to the weekly, we can see the 100-week moving average. It's being bought up. Doesn't quite hit the 786 yet, but I don't see why it can't get there. And let's go to stochastic. Yeah, I mean, this one, it still looks like it's bottoming out for a bit. I'm sure the MACD will say something very similar to, yeah. So once this flips positive, last time it flipped positive was pretty good. The time before it flipped positive, I mean, my God, even though it wasn't negative for that long. So yeah, flip positive way back here, and then here briefly, and then boom, away it went. So yeah, right now we're just seeing a lot of bearishness on more macro time frames, and that's okay, because again, we're looking for discounts. Again, if you're watching and you have any altcoin requests, comment below. But I'll go through some of the main ones, the minor stocks, and yeah, we'll go Doge, Cardano, Litecoin, Chainlink. Let's go through those four. Doge, see how Doge is doing. I know there's some Doge fans out there. Boy, that MACD is looking very negative. Oh boy. We have a fib within a fib here. Some Fibonacci inception. But yeah, as soon as it broke out of that uptrend, we saw a move for Doge at around 11 cents up to 48, 49 cents, 300% move. But it got stuck at this 786 fib at around 41 cents. Never really was able to make that fib into support. And so down we've gone. And the 50-week moving average, right now the candle body's hanging on, but we wicked down to the 0.5. And so gone all the way down back to 19 cents. I'm curious what this looks like on the daily. Yeah, the dailies are lost. So that 0.5, I mean, that would have to hold the support. If we're looking horizontally, we'll see the 0.5 was resistance in the past. And on the weekly, it probably looks even more so. Yeah, looks kind of like what the 786 did. So we want to see this 0.5 hold support. Maybe we get another couple weeks down and we see a wick down to here. So around 17 cents. The 382, people believe that if you're still above the 382, so you get a full 618 retracement, so to say, that you're still bullish in some sort of sense, or that the chart hasn't completely died. But we have the 200-week moving average and the 382. If you like Doge and it gets down to 14 cents, I would not blame you for buying. But right now it still is in a downtrend, and that has not been invalidated. Let's go over to Cardano. And let's do, I think it's this one. All right, Cardano. So I was kind of looking at it, seeing like, is there a channel there? Kind of, but not quite. We definitely have buyers on these moving averages. The 50, 100, even the 200. Some lucky schmuck got the 200 down here. But the 382 as well. So a lot of support in here for Cardano. I think this could be, if you're buying Cardano at around 60 cents, which it is right now, and you love Cardano, I wouldn't blame you. Going over to the daily. Yeah, so right now that 382 is holding on. And we saw, the 382, a lot of price action there in the past. But if it loses the 382, Then obviously you're looking at the 236 at around 41 cents. Or these moving averages, 51, then 41 for Cardano. Let's take a look at Litecoin. Try to fly through these a little bit quicker. Litecoin, so it got stuck. I'm pausing because I'm sort of surprised this one's holding up well. Litecoin getting stuck at the 786, not seeing the negativity of Bitcoin, but we have all these moving averages in the 0.5 at around 96. This is curious. When did Litecoin top? All right, so it topped in 2017, right at the end there, May 21. I'm just looking for things that are different about Litecoin, even during pullbacks that we've had in the past. So, yeah, Litecoin not as volatile as many other altcoins, holding up decently well. And so, all right, you go Litecoin. But with the way the market's going, I mean, this is just me, but I'm cautious about the alts. And, XRP Litecoin holding up so far so good. But if it came down to 96, that'd be a discount territory. These moving averages and the 0.5. If it came down to the 0.5, that's what I'd be taking a look at. Let's go to Chainlink, one of my favorites. And Chainlink, man, getting under that 0.5. A lot of buyers here. So it broke underneath that channel. That channel's donezo. Broke underneath that 0.5 here. Buyers in here. We do have these series of higher lows. This trend line going on. Let's take a look at the daily. Coming right down to it. So if you like Litecoin, I do think that this area isn't so bad. And so, this area at around $13 if you like Litecoin. And then underneath there, this 382, all in here I think is a decent discount territory. So let's, sorry, 1 second here. One second. I'm just refreshing the chat here. It's being weird. All right. Apologies about that. Looked like the video. I have another screen open and it looked like it was frozen. So, if you like Litecoin, I think this isn't a bad area. But let's take a look at our other indicators and go stochastic RSI. I mean, that tells me we could still see a little bit lower, which the moving averages and the fibs kind of show. And as far as the MACD, similar thing. We might still see a little bit lower to go. So a lot of these have just turned negative. It does seem like there's a lot of charts showing, even starting with Bitcoin, that we might have a couple months down. And so, I'm sure we'll get a micro bounce and then maybe another little flush. But do not be surprised if we see March kind of bearish and then in April we start to see things turn around. That's what a lot of these charts are showing me. So if you have any other altcoin requests, please put them in the comments below. But I think we will end at AVAX. I can always come back to any requests out there. And then we'll go on to Bitcoin miners. So AVAX, lower end of the channel, at least from these lows here. Yes, you can draw that out a little bit lower if you want. But I do think this area, at least channel-wise, isn't so bad. And again, sometimes, I just take a look at these and say, well, from the last couple of years, its high was around $65, and it is now almost 70% off. So, how Kohl's, you shop there at Target, and they say the shirt's 70% off. They try to get you to buy it. Like, well, maybe that is just a $20 shirt. So, there's a couple ways to look at it, and we can look for that confirmation. But I'd say, as far as my DCA strategy, I don't need to get the exact bottom. I'm looking at getting a bucket of bottoms, and I'm fine buying right now. Even if later this month it goes down more, I'm fine buying more then too. Okay, we don't know where it's going to bottom. We don't have, I think overall, as we take a look at all this, we don't have confirmation of a bottom yet, but we do have those discounts. All right, let's take a look at Mara. Let's go into some mining stocks. Let's take a look at Marathon Digital Holdings. And so this one, it is in its channel. It's at the lower end of that channel. Underneath its moving averages. I wonder if it has a monthly in there somewhere. And yeah, I mean, it's still on that 50-month moving average. But Mara coming down quite a bit. That is a nasty candle. And so in recent memory, ever since November, that top, Mara has come down 60%. Would you buy Mara, the top Bitcoin mining stock? Would you buy Mara at a 60% discount? I like Mara. I'm considering it, so I might pick myself up some Mara. Core Scientific has gone to the number 2 spot again, but we were looking at this with the fib that last time we had a top and a correction. It went down to the 3.2. We're low to high, and it came down to the 3.2, and that's where buyers are. So if you like cores as a miner, then just price-wise, being at around 1075, I mean, you would argue that this might not be the worst time to get cores. I've talked about this one, how on the balance sheet, when I've taken a look at cores, I was taking a look at Palantir here. But the one thing I like about mining stocks is we have the competitive advantage of a balance sheet. And while Mara has a very good ratio, assets to liabilities, Cores does not. And so shout out Market Watch. I love they lay things out, not sponsored. But if we take a look at the balance sheet for Cores, total current assets, I mean, it's not a good trend right there. Let's get rid of that. 97 million, 700 million. And we see it, a not good trend. Assets trending down, and then liabilities way higher. Liabilities way higher. So you never want to see that negative ratio on the start. Whereas, if we took a look at Riot, we'll take a look at Riot's balance sheet, and then we'll be done with balance sheets today unless we have any requests. But, Riot, as far as what I remember it, as a better balance sheet. So billion current assets, 2 billion total assets, 100 million total current liabilities, 200 million total liabilities. That's a pretty darn good ratio. And so even though Cores is higher, and it might do better this bull run, if we have big pullbacks, and let's just say for argument's sake, Bitcoin just had a mid-cycle top and the real top is in 27, 28. If that's the case, I'm not saying it is, but if, and you're going to hold these miners through a correction, a downturn in the stock market, a recession, I'm going to tell you right now, Riot's going to hold up way better than Cores. So we don't know when these corrections are going to happen, if we are closer to a cycle top or a mid-cycle top, but Riot would hold up better in those circumstances if you are just dollar cost averaging and holding. But let's take a look at Riot and see how their chart's looking. So Riot overall, man, as soon as it was trying to hang on to support here at the 382, but as soon as it lost it, it is on its way down. If we take a look at the monthly, yeah, I mean, it's just underneath all of them there. So the moving averages, it is losing them right now. So we can take that off technically, even though part of it's still holding on. If it truly loses this 382 completely, then I'm looking for that $7 Riot again. But as far as horizontally, as we look, we have a couple peaks back here, and it lines up with the bottoms over here. So, horizontal trend line wise, sure, it might be some support, but, this is one where I would be looking for confirmation first. We don't have, well, actually, I'm going to pause myself. was going to say we don't have confirmation, but, this stochastic RSI might say, we might get a little bit of a bounce, and then we'll see, is it going to go down further? Let's take a look at the MACD on Riot MACD. And yeah, this looks like it's just starting as far as a downtrend's concerned. So I would not be shocked to see this go a little bit lower. So overall, again, I think we're seeing a theme here of that we may still have a month of bearishness. And yes, there might be some bounces in there, but that's what it's looking like, unless we get sort of a V recovery and volume ripping in. But that just doesn't seem like the conditions that are out there right now. All right, let's go to the next miner. We have BitDeer doing pretty well. So BitDeer, more of a classic miner stock. And, well, it says it was doing it said it was up 13% on the day. Okay, there we go. Me saying BitDeer is doing well. So it's up 13% today. Look at that. We went all the way down. We had this, here's this market psychology guy celebrating, saying BitDeer is doing well. We went down 16%, but hey, we're up 14%. I apologize for my reaction. That was stupid. But it got up to its 1618 on the fib before. It's come back down to the 786. That's the takeaway here. It is getting support at its 786. I'm embarrassed by that reaction. Getting support at the 786. And we also have these moving averages. So, it could still come down more, but this wick is telling me, even if we see candle bodies here, that, okay, this is where we've had tops before too, and breakouts. And where the price was hanging out a while back. So BitDeer, the 786 around $10. I'm willing to be patient on that one. Not really buying BitDeer anyways, if I'm being honest with you. CleanSpark one, I do like some CleanSpark. This one, we have a lot of channels going on. And then this one not only has gotten underneath this price, but we see it getting under that 0.5. So for starters, I'm going to wait for more confirmation or at least bottoming on their channels before I get in. Let's go to Iron. I know there's someone in the comments time to time who's a big Iron fan. And how's Iron doing? Well, we probably have to take a look at the daily. You saw this. So the daily moving averages were lost, but man, that is not looking good at all. Went from the 786 down to the 618. So you want to see the 618 hold up. That channel, I don't really think is valid anymore, to be honest. So we'll take that away. But, maybe look for Iron's price action to hang around here at the 618 and hope that holds. Otherwise, the 618, it was resistance for a long time. And then it was kind of support along with the moving averages. So maybe it can be support again, but that's what I'd be taking a look at for Iron. We'll take a look at Wolf and Cypher and then go back to any altcoins that I'm curious about. Wolf, what do we got here? Still in that channel, but that 382, I think that 382 is an area to look for. Let's go to the daily. Yeah. So Doji means undecided. Maybe thinking about doing a bounce or something, and going up to where all this resistance is, the 0.5 and these moving averages. And so, that's what I'd be taking a look at for Wolf. And otherwise, possibly coming back down. And so, let's see here. 1 second. All right. So, yeah, I would not be shocked to see if it came up and then possibly down further. Long story short. All right. Let's do, what was the last one? Cypher. Let's do Cypher, and then we'll go back to some alts that I'm just curious about. We need to take a look at Bonk. All right, Cypher coming down into the lower area of the channel, not quite all the way down to it, but it got back into that golden pocket. And so we have the 618 to the 0.65 hanging out in there. That's the daily. What does the weekly say? Seems like it's holding up so good. Still pretty decent on the weekly. The 100 week moving average and the 6.5 being bought up. But again, I kind of like the look of this on the daily a little bit more, seeing this base down here as far as what it's doing. So that's what we got on the daily. And then I think that we should take a look at some other altcoins. That's what I want to do. All right. So let's go to Jasmy here. And Jasmy's been one I've been watching for a bit as a possible play. When I'm looking for diamonds in the rough, and I'll tell you, full transparency, when I was trying to find diamonds in the rough, and as far as altcoins the last few cycles, I found ones like DNT, Tron. There was another altcoin that did really good for me last cycle, but then it died. Was it Voyager? Forget. Fetch. But for all the diamonds in the rough, I've also found absolute garbage pails. So, it's not a total winning strategy. I will say that. So kind of a channel there. Not really buying this whole channel, to be honest. But right now, Jasmy is hanging out at the 382. And so you can see it's come down to these areas before, all the way between 1.5 cents to a little bit higher. And so, I think possible decent discount area for Jasmy. And let's go over to the weekly again. All right. Let's go over to the weekly, and we'll see that, I am worried about it losing these moving averages. And if it does lose it, there's a big gap there for Jasmy. If it does lose the moving average in the 382, do not be shocked to see it come down back to a penny for Jasmy. Let's take a look at some of these. Stochastic RSI is bottoming out a bit. But if Bitcoin were to get in that 70 to 77,000 range, you're going to see alts suffer a lot. And that's what we talked about with this, with the start of this video, is that Bitcoin right now, that's looking very, medium micro term bearish. And this area is what I'd be eyeing for ultimate support in here. And so, maybe we'll leave the video there, is that we want to see a bottom on Bitcoin. Are we going to get a V bottom? To me, this doesn't look like it's a V bottom or anything like it yet, but it's losing the 200-day moving average, right? No doubt about that. It's losing the 200-day. And so we want to see some support around this price action. There's 74K. The 50-week moving average is 77K. 236 retracement gets down to 69K. So I'm still looking for a little bit lower, that 70 to 77K area for Bitcoin, and then see where it's at. But right now we don't have the confirmation, and I still see a little bit more movement to the downside. So anyways, thank you all for watching, for coming along. Hope this stream was a little bit better than last time with some of the internet issues. If you notice anything, please comment those below. It's good to hear, so then I can fix things on my end. But I appreciate y'all coming by, and I hope y'all have a wonderful, fantastic Friday and an amazing weekend. So thanks for watching, and take care.